In this video, we will see how to humanize a text that comes from ChatGPT, but in general, this would apply to any text generated by any AI tool. And we're going to do it using only free tools. With paid tools that I'll mention later, the process would be faster, but I will focus in this video on using only free tools before explaining how to do it, and at the end, I will share my preferred method. Let's explain why it's important to humanize, and basically, I can think of two reasons. The first one is when we are writing for our blog so that users see a text, a post that makes sense to them. Many times, we realize that a text generated by AI has what is called very little engagement, it doesn't feel human, and it interests users less. And for the same reason, also for SEO, it's very likely that non-humanized texts will struggle much more to rank in search engines. Let's start by going to ChatGPT. I wrote it previously, and I asked it to explain what SEO is in 400 words. Here, without further ado, it generated this text. I used a model that's not one of the newest because I want to make sure it's available in the free version of ChatGPT. I generated the text and now let's go to one of the tools. There are multiple ones. Here we see one that detects artificial content. I just pasted the text and we can clearly see here that it indicates the content was written by AI. Specifically, this tool connects with other tools, and in almost all of them, I see here that it detects it as 100% artificial, and in some, it has some doubts. So the next step is I'm going to show you a prompt I use sometimes to humanize the text. Here it is, and I'll explain what it's about. I tell it, apply the following guidelines, the following rules to improve the text. Here, I'm going to wait a bit. What does it consist of? It's about trying to reproduce those parameters, those rules that make human writing different from artificial intelligence writing. And I tell it, be conversational and friendly, as if you're chatting or talking with a friend. Use the first person, incorporate touches of humor and irony. I want you to get the idea. You don't need to copy this prompt exactly, but I'll explain what I've put in the prompt so you can apply it with your own words. I tell it, include rhetorical questions and short exclamations to emphasize the text. This is important. Combine short sentences with longer ones. Many times we see AI-generated texts where the sentences are very long, convoluted, so it's good to tell it, make sure the sentences don't have more than 15 words, and I even like shorter phrases with a few longer ones. That makes the text feel more natural. Then, there's a coefficient used in the US that basically says, use a text style that a 15-year-old can understand, because otherwise, it tends to get overloaded and uses uncommon words. I tell it to aim for a public so that a 15-year-old can understand the text you're going to write. Also, use familiar words, avoid complex terms, and only use them when necessary. Also, reduce the number of adverbs. One of the typical things that AI uses is too many adverbs. Another important thing, use colloquialisms, contractions, interjections to make the language much more natural. Avoid repetitive words and unnatural text structures. We're going to continue. I'm going to focus on what's most important. There are formatting topics here that aren't too important, but you can add subheadings if necessary, use bullet points if necessary, and consider including forms of dialogue as if you were having a conversation. That makes the text, as we will see later, much more fluid and natural. I told it to rewrite the text, and here's the result. As you can see, it now combines single words and a bit more variety, and it seems much more natural. Following what we saw earlier, I went to one of those AI content detection tools, and we went from 100% to 57%. We've improved a bit, and now I'll explain further. Before I tell you my preferred way of humanizing the text, let me mention that, as I said at the beginning, there are paid tools for this. One of them is using what's called specialized ChatGPT chats, which exist in the paid version where you've trained ChatGPT to generate more humanized text. But for that, you'll need the paid version of ChatGPT. Of course, we also have our current tool, which is in beta testing, Brainhogan. Here, it can automatically publish fully humanized texts directly to your blog. But I won't go into that because it's not the focus of this video. Let's continue with the example, and I'll explain my favorite way. It's as follows, use a text that you've written yourself, or you can even copy a well-ranked article from a good source that ranks well in search engines. Then, you tell ChatGPT, copy the style, tone, voice, and structure of the following text and rewrite the article for me. In this case, I've copied one of my old posts, and as I said, you can do it with your own text if you want to express, in quotation marks, your voice in the text that it will generate. Or, you can copy a text from a prominent author or someone well-ranked in search engines because that ensures it's a text valued by search engines. I simply told it to rewrite the text, and it generated the article. Now, I'm going to show you the results, but before I do, one last thing I wanted to mention. You can also use, when generating the text, to tell it to avoid a series of typical AI words. Here's a list. I don't know if it shows correctly, let me ensure it. You'll see that these words are typical of AI. If you search online, you'll find multiple lists of overused words in AI. You just copy the list and tell it, avoid these words, and when it gives you the response, don't use these words. Now, going back to where we were. We've generated the text and see here, I've pasted it in the same detector as before. Remember, it was at 57%, and now we're at 100%. As I said, this is perhaps the best way. Copy your text and ask it to replicate the structure, the voice, and the speaking style of that text to generate your response. That's the end of the video. I would appreciate it if you leave your comments with the tools you use if you use any to create content with AI. Leave them in the comments. Until next time.